This video is dedicated to Barry. First, I'm going to show you how to adjust the date on your Tag Heuer chronograph watch. The first method to do this is to simply use the quick date set adjustment on the watch to advance the date one day. You can see that the date is currently set to the 9th, but we need to change it to the 10th. You'll have to do this every month that there's only 30 days, because the watch is currently set up on a 31-day date system. First, we're going to unscrew the crown, and you can see where the crown is currently sitting flush with the watch case. So we're going to unscrew it counterclockwise, and you'll have to rotate it maybe just a couple turns, and then you'll feel just a slight snap from the spring once it's released. You might hear a little click. Now you can see that the crown's been released. Now we need to pull the crown just ever slightly to the very first setting. You'll hear a small click as well. It doesn't take much, and you can see now the crown's out a little bit further. So you can see that the date is currently set to the 9th. Now we're going to rotate the crown clockwise until the date advances. And that's it. Now we're going to screw the crown back in. This is a very important step. Apply a little bit of pressure, snap it back into place. You can see it's not screwed down yet. Now we're going to rotate the crown clockwise with a little bit of pressure until it engages the threads. Now you don't want to screw it down too tight, but you want to make sure it is screwed down flush. And just check the back of the watch and make sure that it's flush with the watch case, as shown here. Now when using this method, you want to make sure that the time is set prior to 12 p.m. noon. Otherwise, your watch will be 12 hours off. Now the second way that you can advance the date is to actually rotate the hands 24 hours until the date changes. So basically we're going to use the same method. You have to unscrew the crown. You'll hear a little snap. Now we're going to pull the we're going to pull the crown to the first step, but now we need to pull it to the second step, which is actually the time setting position. You'll hear another snap. Now the crown is actually out a little bit further than it was before. And this allows us to advance the time completely 24 hours. Bear with us here. You'll notice also that when I pulled the crown, it actually stopped the watch from running. The small second hand up here, that's your small second hand. You'll notice that it stopped. Now normally when I pull a crown, I like to have it set at exactly 0 seconds, and I didn't on this one. So I'll just snap it back in. I'll kind of show you. Now that small second hand is running again. Here it comes, coming around. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to let it run until it gets to 0. I like all my watches to be spot on. And I use time.gov as a reference for my time. So as that's coming around, I'm going to pull it to the first click, and I'm going to pull it to the second click. So now that second hand, that small second hand, actually you can't really see it. There it is, lined up with the 0 because it's behind the large chronograph hand. So I'm going to continue to rotate. Now it's still showing the 10th, but it just snapped there to the 11th, see? I always like to use this method because whenever you're using the quick date method that I showed you in the first example, the watch doesn't always know where it's at, and sometimes it might advance a date at noon instead of midnight. So now I'm going to set it to time. I'm going to set it to 10 a.m. in 10 minutes. Now with a normal watch, you would set it, let's say I want to set the watch to 10:10. So now I'm at 10 o'clock on the hour hand, 10 minutes on the minute hand. And normally I would just push the crown back in. This watch uses a special movement though. In order to keep accurate time, it's actually imperative that you advance the time just ever so slightly, about a minute. So let's say I wanted to set the watch to 10:10. I actually need to set the watch to 10:11, about a minute ahead of time. Because when I push the crown back in, it actually takes the watch about 60 seconds to catch up and remove any slack in the gears of this special movement. So if I set the watch to 10:11 and I push the crown in, you'll see the second hand starting to move, but the minute hand won't move until about a minute. So you're actually having to set it ahead of time in order for the watch to catch up, for it to be accurate. If I set this watch at 10:10 and push the crown back in, it would actually be off by a minute. It'd be a minute slow. So that's why I have to set it 1 minute in advance. So now I'm going to push the crown back in, and you have to push it all the way in until it stops, and you'll see where it is now. Now I need to screw it back into place. And again, you want to just screw it, put a little bit of pressure, clockwise, rotate it. You don't want to rotate too tight, but you want to make sure you rotate it until it stops. Otherwise, you'll allow dust, dirt, moisture to get into the watch. You don't want that. So it's not turning anymore. I'm not forcing it. And you'll look on the back of the watch and you'll see that the crown is flush with the watch case. So I was able to advance my date and change the time. And now you can see that the small second hand is moving. But notice how the minute hand really hasn't moved yet, because it won't start moving until this actually goes around the first minute. And once this second hand comes around to the minute mark, now you'll notice that the minute hand will actually start to move. And when this comes around again, it'll be set to 10:12. So I know it sounds confusing, but basically all you need to remember is to set the minute hand 1 minute ahead of time, because it takes about a minute for this hand to reach up with actual time. So now when the second hand hits the 0 mark, this watch will actually read 10:12. And there you go. If you have any questions, feel free to call me.